Following total atomic annihilation, the rebuilding of this great nation of ours may fall to you. That's why we here at Vault Boys WV will take you on an oral tour of the beautiful state of West Virginia. There's no other place to be better prepared for the impending fallout. Now we go live to our team of experts.
Hello, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of Vault Boys WV. If you didn't know, this is a weekly podcast bridging the gap between Fallout 76 and West Virginia through history, culture, and personal experiences. Some of it has references, and the rest is just our local take. From holler to highway, we've got you covered 6 ways to Sunday. I'm your resident Appalachian scribe, Dave Chaffins, and this week we have a very special guest. This week, I've invited John Barton, who wears many hats, including writing articles and working with WV Explorer, as well as 100 Days in Appalachia, as well as his work with the West Virginia Autism. And he had the unique opportunity of attending the Greenbrier event. And I sat down for him this week to have a conversation about his story and his experience prior to at the event and what he's planning on in the future. So this week, it's not going to be your traditional episode where we break it up into different segments. I had the idea of doing that, but I kind of wanted to see where the conversation went. And let me tell you, this conversation was fantastic. Having somebody from West Virginia go and play the game and tell his story and experience of why the game is important to West Virginia for really the first time anywhere. You've seen different little articles and write-ups, but John has a very unique story and understanding of what this game means to the state. He explored locations that you haven't even seen. There hasn't been video of with the different influencers and YouTubers that went. A lot of his stuff was based in southern West Virginia in relation to Fallout 76. So he has a really fantastic story about going and talking to the developers and artists and team that worked on this video game. So one of the things that John mentioned is that he is working on a big event. He's calling it Reclamation Day, and it is a festival of both West Virginia and Fallout 76 that is the weekend of the 9th and 10th of November. That's in Huntington, West Virginia. And the event itself is in support of charity like Cafe Appalachia, Children's Home Society, WV Autism, and WV Healthy Kids and Families Coalition. And there's going to be cosplayers, vendors, speakers, games. There's probably going to be a panel. I may be on a panel. Who knows? There's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great time, and he talks about kind of taking that energy and spirit that West Virginia's had and creating a really fun and special event. So I hope that you all can come out that day and celebrate and have fun and support these wonderful causes. We're all very excited, and I hope that I can see a few of you there. So with that, we will move into our conversation. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great.
How's your week going?
Really good. I'm getting a lot of things, work, and a few plans coming together, and just waiting to see what happens when Fallout 76 comes out.
That's fun. So give me a little bit of background on you. I know that you we kind of talked a little bit before. You kind of wear a lot of hats and do a few different things, but stuff that's particularly relative to the game itself. Give me a little bit of your background.
I work for, I've started a nonprofit that is WV Autism, and we work for creating autism resources for families in the state. So I've been doing for the past year a lot of social skills gaming groups and creating spaces for children and adults with autism to come in, to interact, work on social skills in a safe environment, and that their parents can get support and talk about resources. And then Fallout 76 was announced, and I started seeing ways that those two might connect.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of games do they normally play at these kinds?
Generally not Fallout. We tend to focus on multiplayer games that are collaborative or cooperative.
Like more split screen, or does it?
More split screen, more the ability that you can put 2 to 4 people together and let them interact with things. So whether that's Mario Kart or Minecraft, which is incredibly, I think I have Minecraft for 5 different consoles. Like completely different,
right.
360, PS2, just everything. but also just trying to put it together so that they can do things that they enjoy, that they might be used to be playing sort of in isolation as an escape or as a release, and instead can learn how to take that, something that's relaxing, put it with something that's stressful, and come out sort of better for it.
Yeah.
So that they can connect with other people and play and learn skills that way. So it's a very natural sort of way of teaching social skills.
Yeah, it's a different kind of environment, it seems.
It is. It's something that I'm finding that there are a few other people around the country that are experimenting with, of what are different ways of using video games to teach social skills and interact with. So this is one that I'm doing locally. I know there's another group in Kentucky. But other than that, I've had people reach out to me from larger areas and from other states going like, hey, how do we get this started? What do we do with it? And right now I'm like, just let me take care of West Virginia first, and then we'll see what we can do
that's fantastic.
elsewhere and go from there. Thank you.
That's great. So with Fallout 76.
With Fallout 76, it was the teaser trailer. Like everybody else that lives within the 304, you watch the teaser trailer and the radio kicks on and you hear Country Roads and you're going, wait, is that? And then you have this reaction to it. But with Fallout 76 and with that, there's this shot a few seconds after Country Roads comes on, when you see the inside of the vault, and not the bedroom, but you see this large open area in the vault, and you see the poster for Reclamation Day. And there was something about that that struck me. And I kept playing around with that idea, trying to figure out why. Like, you'd see the pictures later, and the E3 trailer came out.
Right.
And you could see, landscapes and the New River Gorge Bridge and what was probably Mothman, but it was still that view of inside the vault. And then it finally hit me. The Fallout series has been going on for 20 years. Like, you look online and go through the lore and the history of the game, and there are, I think the wiki lists hundreds of different vaults, some that we see and some that we just hear about.
Right.
And in the ones that, Vault-Tec didn't kill everyone inside of.
Right, because they had those experiments.
Yeah, that there were some survivors. Those survivors stayed in the vault. Like, given the choice, they talked about the vault and the safety of it. And that no matter how badly run down it was or disrepair, that the wasteland was dangerous and they'd rather be there. And a few occasions, even you have raiders who break into the vault, kill everybody inside, and then take it over.
Right.
The same thing. But here we see a perfectly pristine vault. And you're looking at it and you're going, okay, maybe this is before it's been used. But there are all the decorations on the floor, all the confetti, all the balloons, like after a huge party. And it's completely empty. Like, that's unlike anywhere else in the series. And I'm thinking, Reclamation Day. You look at the decorations, and with the banners and the pendants, it looks like a homecoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of a high school, or a community homecoming event.
They clean up after prom.
Yeah. It's that moment where they haven't quite swept it up, but it's still, it's balloons and confetti.
Right.
It's very homey. That vault was closed for 25 years. That's long enough for families to form, to have children. And in the course of doing all the things that families do as they form, of telling bedtime stories. And you're in this vault, so what else are you going to do but create stories and create these tales and talk about folklore and lore and history and about this land and home that you want to reclaim. And which means there's the potential there that every year their major celebration was Reclamation Day. They knew the date. It was already preordained. This is the date it will open. So they had this countdown that they could have celebrated annually like a homecoming, that here's the time when we finally get to go back out, knowing it had been destroyed, knowing that it was going to be dangerous, that it was going to be hard work, and not a single person in that vault chose to stay. They all left. You can't tell that story anywhere but West Virginia. Like, nowhere else does it make sense. I was fortunate enough to be one of 6 people from West Virginia that got to go to the Greenbrier event. And talking, like connecting with everybody that was there from West Virginia and talking to them, it all kind of made the same sense to them. But then asking the other influencers and the other media what they thought about it, and they talk about, they tried to understand it through the lens of, well, that's the South. Or that. And I'm like, no,
Not the South.
not, like, you're missing the point of Appalachia.
Right.
Like, because there's some elements of the Southern culture, but there's elements of all culture here. West Virginia is a very unique kind of that. But as far as Appalachia, we're the only state that's entirely within the region, like, which kind of means we own it. Everybody else just has visiting rights. You know, they get to kind of walk through, but this is us.
I'm often told just from, and part of my studies in college was Appalachian studies and go through the program there, and often told it's like, oh yeah, even in Georgia and New York, there's members of Appalachia, and it's like, oh yeah, from that like, you know, scholarly mind, yeah, of course, you know, they're different regions, but you know, even now moving into the heart of it, it's like, no, there's just
no. Yep.
There's West Virginia, maybe Eastern Kentucky, maybe a little bit of Southwest Virginia,
and that's it. Like, it's a completely different. It's a different way of seeing the world. The way I finally tried to explain it at the Greenbrier to non-residents was, okay, have you seen the Jennifer Garner clip on Conan? They're like, you could see them doing the math in their head like, okay, I know who Jennifer Garner is. Did I know she was in West Virginia? And what is he talking about? And I tried to find it on YouTube and show them that wonderful 10-minute rant of Conan going, so I hear you love West Virginia. And whatever she was there to promote, she steps off and very respectfully talks about West Virginia for 10 minutes, quizzing him on state facts of wherever he's from, and finishes in an impromptu a cappella version of the West Virginia Hills, start to finish, right there on the show. Like that.
Right.
Like I tried to explain that to them. Like somehow that answered it completely, and they were just even more dumbfounded, going, "Wait, that happened?" Like, yes.
Yeah, I think there's a, you know, people often associate, like, my best explanation of it is people often associate country roads as just like the song you sing at 1 a.m. at the bar, and here it's the song that you hear almost at every funeral.
Yeah.
Like, because people have a real connection to not just their home and their home place, but the state and what it means for themselves.
Well, yeah, and it's how it connects. It's hard to describe. I don't think this is true. West Virginia, unfortunately, one of the things we get known for is that we consistently lose population.
Yeah, we have to be the avatar for poverty and drug use, and
that's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And yet, for many of those people that leave, they never really take on a new identity. Like, there's this idea that you've left this place, that you've left home, and that sometimes you return, you know, or you kind of strive to, but that they're expats living all over the place that still identify as, where are you from? West Virginia. You know, this is home. So it's sort of making that connection. And with this game, it was those little details. The map and the locations is fascinating. Like how you condense 24 million square miles down to 16.
Essentially making it like this like natural Disneyland of West Virginia locations.
You know, Escott, just that world and shrunk down. But it works. But you could have gotten all of that from Google Earth. The lore and the history and all of that. Again, Wikipedia is your friend. Like, that could have been found. But there are these little cultural things that just stand out as being uniquely us, as being really important. Playing the game, it's the strangest one, but it makes sense to me. In southern West Virginia, there's a little family restaurant called Hillbilly Hot Dogs.
I'm familiar with Hillbilly Hot Dogs.
Okay. It has a very unique look. Like, it's great food if you like hot dogs.
See, my story from that is that's where I learned the difference between. I'm originally from Bluefield, which is in West Virginia, but I don't know the difference between what hot dog sauce is and what hot dog chili is.
Right.
When you're talking hot dog chili, which is what I grew up with, that includes beans.
Yes.
But hot dog sauce is no beans. And so when I ordered hot dog chili and got beans on my hot dog, I was very confused.
It's just a completely different, like, there's so many different ways that you can do it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been a while since I've been, but their shtick for a while was you can get anything on a hot dog you wanted. So if you told them that you wanted, gummy bears and jalapenos,
They put it on.
they'd put it on there. They had everything available, and if you wanted it, they'd let you have it. But as interesting as the menu items are, it's the decoration. It's just the hubcaps and the antlers and the license plates and just all of this fantastic stuff that looks kind of like the inside of a Cracker Barrel, only more so. Cracker Barrel on an acid
more
trip.
realistic, not.
Yes. But that's not like, even though they've got some wonderful press from a couple of food networks, there's still like maybe 8 counties that get that reference out of 55. It's a local sort of thing. But it's in the game. You're going down, from Vault 76, you go down south towards the ash heap, and after you go by Camden Park and the Newcomb Cola Quantum plant.
Or John Amos.
Yeah. And there's this airliners, I think is called the silver metal campers that people convert into diners. And they're very popular in Fallout games for turning into diners and popping them everywhere like Americana. So you see this and you go over to them and you go, oh yeah, that says Hill Folk Hot Dogs. And I just stared at it for the longest time because it looks so normal. Like, you had the airliner and you had like a couple of things stacked up against it. And there's a pair of deer antlers on the ground, which is an item that I hadn't seen anywhere else until I got to that location. But for the most part, that's it. And I'm going, and I started wandering around and ducked inside to look around and see what decorations and things were there, and it was not a lot. It looked like kind of a normal diet, except for the name, which means somebody found this local icon and found it interesting and unique enough that they had to put it in the game. But at the same time, in talking to the developers and the artist, doing this, creating this game in this world respectfully and paying respect to it and not making jokes and not making... so no mutant hillbillies, or anything like that. Just doing it justice.
It's not like they're redoing Silent Hill or anything.
No. Like, this isn't Wrong Turn.
Right.
And yet you saw this place, you're like, we have to put this in the game. We can't put this in the game. But we have to. So they did, and they toned it down. Yay. Like, instead of going in the other direction of, no, we'll add to it. No, they can't even do it accurately. There was no way to take the way Hillbilly Hot Dogs actually looks and put it in the game and expect that people that didn't know it was a real place understand that it wasn't a joke. So they had to tone it down, but that was preferable than just deleting it from the game. I thought that was a really interesting choice. And it was things like that that kept hitting what an interesting perspective that they had gained on West Virginia. When I went to the Greenbrier, I'd ask friends and the people I knew, what questions do you want me to ask? What do you really want to know? And the number one thing was, what's the connection to West Virginia? Like, on the staff for Bethesda, in the studio, who's responsible for this? And talking to people and talking to like Jeff Gardner, some of the heads during the roundtable, and while they all said, we have a number of employees that are from West Virginia, there was no, this guy stood up and said, no, we have to do this. But then I ran across two guys, a lead artist and one of the lead developers and writers. And both of them, even though they weren't from the state, there's this little known kind of phenomenon where people move to West Virginia and just fall in love with it. Like, even if they're not from here, they just, everything about it appeals to them and they get it. And not like they're throwing on coveralls and running around, but it's just they get and appreciate the culture and the lore and the world. And these two had spent so much time, like at first, because the discussion came up, why West Virginia? And originally they were looking at Pennsylvania or West Virginia. And Nate had said that the West Virginia had a more interesting history and topography and just landscape, and most of it was untapped. Like, because it was so unknown, it actually made us exotic. Right. And that's an interesting notion to wrap your head around.
Well, I mean, that's how it was back in the 1800s, and that's why you had, the Hatfields and McCoys drew such a popular, I guess, a fame between people in New England or, out west or something like that. That there was kind of this exotic nature to West Virginia, and it wasn't necessarily covered in the best way back then.
Yeah, exotic, but a better word might be infamous.
Yeah.
like saying that it wasn't positive is kind of an understatement.
Right.
But yeah, but this is different. I truly believe sales for this game will approach 20 million, which means you have 10 times the population of the state playing in a virtual version of this game, exploring the West Virginia that Bethesda has created. And from everything that I've seen and talked to people about it, it's an incredibly positive view.
I'm really happy about that.
I'm ecstatic about it. We got to play the game for 3 hours, and I'm sitting there, and because we kept getting to mingle and talk to people, and as developers and artists found out that there were a few of us there from West Virginia, they kept coming over and talking to us and looking us out and singling us out. And so I'm playing during the 3 hours, and Nate comes over and says, "So, what do you think?" And really wanted to know kind of what my impression was and how did it see it. But it was funny because we had just, we were on headsets and playing in teams, and I just popped out of the vault, and there's this moment of it's kind of blinding.
Right.
And then it becomes clear, and you can see landscape and trees and leaves, because in the game world, it's October. So it's this beautiful fall, leaves changing and everything else.
That's the best time to make a game in West Virginia is during the fall. Yeah. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it just, it gives it that sort of unique look. But the other people I was playing with had stopped whatever they were doing and just were caught up in the landscape. Like, oh my God, this is beautiful. We're just kind of struck by it. And here I am chasing after a squirrel.
Yeah.
Like just running around. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should take a look around.
And that's a real life thing, because when we walk our dogs down at the Capitol, beautiful Capitol complex, trees and everything, but there are in particular black squirrels there, and there are black squirrels nowhere else, just there. And I'm looking particularly for the black squirrels when I'm walking around this beautiful area.
Yeah, it's like a squirrel. But there were so many things that were just, it was breathtaking. And what they had created, and you get that sense of you're in, a valley or going through a holler, and you can't see beyond where you are. Mm-hmm. So there's no idea of really what's on the other side of it. And for other players, I think that will be really interesting, because I cannot think of another single game out there that has any sort of sandbox or open world. Skyrim, a little bit.
Right.
But even it's not the Appalachians and the more rolling hills. It's more Rockies and mountains. This is...
where everything's kind of tucked away.
Yeah.
Here. Whereas in Skyrim or in Oblivion or something like that, it's all like... large landmass. Okay, here's where everything is.
Yeah.
Here's where this is. You've got caves and you got different stuff. But I mean, your cities, your interesting locations are pretty visible because they want you to go there.
Yeah, because you're looking at, like, you can see giant valley and that's it. And here, you're on the top of a hill and you can see 4 or 5 hills and valleys in the distance, and you're like, I really wonder what's over there. So there's going to be a lot to explore, I think, in that regards. But getting back to the Greenbrier event, most of the players, and as you dig through YouTube videos, you'll kind of, the team leads were offering to take us over to see the Greenbrier in the game. And because for most people that was what they knew,
right?
That's where they went.
My favorite was IGN, I think, posted a video when they were like comparing real life West Virginia locations to the photos. I was like, oh, so they went out different places. No, it's just the Greenbrier.
It's just the Greenbrier. Like, you're going through the videos, like, there are 400 hours of video coming out. And most of it's of the Greenbrier.
And Flatwoods. Yeah.
Like, in the Mothman Museum. Now, the Mothman Museum is really interesting. And for those that pulled it, I was really happy. And they included the statue. Yeah. Which is incredible. So that's a lot of fun.
There was one detail I saw that I pointed out last week that I think it was maybe Oxhorn's video that he did, where if you go on the second floor of the Mothman Museum, there's a note up there talking about a guy named Jeff who lives up on the top floor of the Mothman Museum, and then gives like merchandise and posters out to people, and is like, "Thank you so much, Jeff, for the poster. We really loved it." And in real life, the Mothman Museum owner is named Jeff. That's like one of those details.
Well, it's realistic but disappointing, but I get it. If you've gone through the Mothman Museum, it's largely newspaper clippings and photos and magazines and all of this paper. So even though it's protected now, put it in that environment, give it 25 years,
right?
Throw in some looters, and give an honest of what you actually expect to see there. Right. It's still a fantastic place. There's a mural on the wall outside that looks amazing. The statue, some of the posters inside. And then, like you mentioned, the notes and some of the other things, digging into it. But it looks huge on the map. Like, there's even Camden Park doesn't have a sign that big as you're looking at the map, and it's like, Mothman Museum, it's over here.
Right here, yeah.
I don't think anything stands out as large as it does when you're looking at the new map. I headed south. I wanted to go see Mothman Museum, and then I wanted to go through the Huntington area and go through the ash heap. And it's all... The ash heap is interesting. I mean, yes, it's most of southern West Virginia and the coal fields crammed over into one area.
Right. I kind of like, and just as a little tangent, I like that the like post-apocalyptic wasteland, I guess is a word that they have, isn't made by bombs. It's made by natural disasters that very likely could occur here at any time, like chemical leakage in the Toxic Valley or floods from one of the dams. If one of the Summersville or Bluestone, if one of them break, it's going to be that flood and it's going to take everything out. Just like mountaintop removal, which you go over the hill, literally in Charleston, like in the game, you go over the hill, and you got Kanawha State Forest there, and around Kanawha State Forest, it's all mountaintop removal. These big areas through there. I thought it was just interesting that they didn't focus on what a nuclear bomb particularly does, but more or less what, like environmentally, what happens when people aren't there to man the stations.
Yeah. The ash heap will break your heart.
I'm sure it will.
I like it.
Being from southern West Virginia, it probably will.
It's not just the locations, and it's not just the people. And understand, I was just trying to see locations.
Right.
So I'm level 3 running through a level 30 and 40 area. So I'm literally running through the area and just trying to see.
I saw a video of somebody that went to Watauga, and I was watching them like go across into the Cranberry Guides-esque area, and they were like running, and there's like the Scorch Beast, and he looks back, and there's like 10 of them, and they're all like level 50. And this guy flying about
and just chasing him down.
Yeah.
See, that was it. I kept getting chased by Scorched, which aren't ghouls, but are something else entirely. And just from a gameplay, I'm really curious to see what that is.
I kind of have a theory on that I discussed in the last episode.
I don't know. There are a couple of really depressing possibilities.
Yeah.
But you get into the ash heap, and if you've ever seen a coal pile burn, that's what that entire area looks like.
Oh my gosh.
There's not, like, well, just imagine if you had no regulations, no environmental protections, no anything. Take our history of mine wars and unions and coal mining for the past 100 years, and then throw that in a time machine 100 years in the future, and what's that going to look like with a science fiction twist? So you can see it on this map, this giant earth excavator,
right,
that's just
in this
ripping through
area.
the earth. And this black area, there are a number of tanks up on Mount Blair that you're not sure if they're because of the Red Menace or if they're there for an entirely different reason. And Welch, I didn't get to see very well.
That's where all of my family kind of their homestead is from that McDowell County Welch area. Which is funny to hear people pronounce that online, and I've heard Welsh 1,000 times. Also, the transatlantic lunatic asylum was my favorite pronunciation.
Well, talking about pronunciation, Ferret said that they had worked on the voice work for close to 3 years. And he couldn't guarantee that they had it all correct, but that they made people re-record for saying Appalachian.
Yeah,
like
if you're from West Virginia, you don't say that.
No, latch, not lay. So that the correct pronunciation, there was a correct pronunciation, and it was absolutely Appalachian. And say it right or do it again. Have a nice day. And he was like, when you're talking about, I think we got most of them. He literally could cite one example of one guy that they think kind of messed it up, and they couldn't get him back to fix it.
Couldn't get him back, yeah.
Which means they knew the only non-example they could find in the entire game, which is beyond remarkable.
Yeah, to sit and kind of understand, because language here is so important, and it's the difference between whether you are an insider or an outsider. Like, it's not, the southern accents, there's a billion, different kinds of them, but here it's like people know People understand.
Well, it's
Even if it's, from different varying levels, people.
yeah.
People
I
get it.
I teach theater, and I direct Shakespeare with high school students that many of them had never even seen a play before, much less Shakespeare, and they're like, "This play is how old? And we're doing it why? Like I don't know that. This doesn't make any sense to me." And I went, "So do you understand how the Appalachian language sort of comes into being?" No. Okay. Are you familiar with the King James Bible? Yeah. Great. You'll get along just fine with it. And they're like, huh? And I went, okay, timeline, King James Bible. If this is what you're familiar with and used to reading, this is Shakespeare. Just more like the TV of the time. And that worked. I don't know how many kids and things I've directed with Shakespeare and worked there, and just teaching some of the classics through high school. But teaching Shakespeare in West Virginia has to be easier than teaching it anywhere else in the U.S. because the language isn't the barrier that it is for other places.
I could see that.
It's written in the same time period as if their families are, the local churches and still predominantly, especially in the country churches, tend to use the King James Bible, which is, you're talking the same time period, the same language, and it still works. But yeah, seeing the language in the game and seeing that play an important part was important. Seeing Welch, I really wanted to explore Welch because, like I said, all of the ash heap looks like it's telling one story, which is unique, I think, for Fallout, because normally your locations all have their own storylines.
Right, they're kind of insular to that location
themselves. You've got Welch, you've got Beckley, the Beckley Exhibition coal mine, Mount Blair, so the Battle of Blair Mountain. And
if you want to know more about that, I believe it's episode 3 of the podcast.
Well, as you're going through, there's very clear signs that you had a labor strike, that you had something happening with this mining.
That's what I was curious about, because with the robots and the propaganda that I kind of saw on the walls, it seemed like that it was very implying that don't stand I think one of the posters was don't stand in the way of progress, and it had a human arm and a robot arm, like one of the Protectrons or something.
Did you see the names of any of the robots?
The names? No, I didn't.
So, like I said, level 30, level 40 area.
Right.
I'm level 3, just running for my life, trying to see as much as I can. And I see a robot in Beckley. I see Mr. Gutsy. And I'm like, okay, well, this will be interesting. And then the name pops up on the screen, and I freeze. And all I can do is stare at it and look at the robot and wait to see if I'm reading it wrong, because it says Mr. Gutsy Strikebreaker. And then I hear his voice come in, that robotic voice coming in, and I can't quite make it out, and then it starts shooting out with the lasers, so I have to keep running. But all of the robots, the Mr. Gutsy's, the Sentry bots, the Protectrons, all are this Strikebreaker. And then you start seeing protest signs that are Daddy needs a job. And
that is so cool. Oh.
Well, here's the other, and it's why I'm interested with Welch, because Welch has a couple of possibilities. Because one of the things that you'll see spray painted on is man over machines. JFK is kind of famous for the 1960 campaign and going through Welch.
Yes.
And if you look at his large quote about McDowell County and Welch, and that's sort of a flip of his speech condensed into 3 words.
Right.
But the reference is there. Welch and Blair Mountain, you also get Sid Hatfield in his assassination.
Yeah. Relative of mine.
And I very much want to see the courthouse and see if that's somehow referenced or tied into it.
That's on a later episode, I believe. In 2 or 3 weeks, we've got Hatfields and McCoys coming up.
Okay. But it's like just the entire area, all of that wraps into it. You get into the sci-fi elements when there are mole miners.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's a testing facility off to the side, and I may be way off base, but
That's fine. I shoot out speculation all the time, and I just people could think that guy's an idiot.
well, you're looking at when you first come into it, and you're looking at the robots and the progress posters, and you see that. Okay, so we see already technology taking the place in jobs, but again, a futuristic sci-fi twist. We see in the early part of the Mine Wars that when when unions started forming and started striking, that when the companies couldn't persuade, to put it lightly, the miners to go back to work, the next thing they did was hire cheaper labor to come in,
Right.
and try to take. Well,
Scabs.
yeah. So, well, what if instead of hiring cheaper labor, you create it? If you have access to cloning and genetics and DNA, and you don't have regulations, then what keeps you from taking a animal and creating a subhuman miner?
That would be perfect for being in the dark, being in those tunnels. That's interesting, John.
Like, because the miners they're humanoid size, they're very, very large, they're wearing clothes.
Yeah. They got like the little hoods or something.
Yeah.
And
But there's also, I saw them in a town up on Mount Blair, and they were going through it. But I didn't know what they were at first, but then I saw the testing facility, and I'm like, why would you have that and those? But that was the only connection that I could make for it. Because otherwise, there's just this animal that has mutated into a semi-sentient humanoid and taken over the jobs of what the previous owners were doing, which is unlike anything else in the Fallout universe.
Right.
On the other hand, corporations doing evil things that's right in line.
Yeah.
Like pesky morals and ethics. Those concerns there. Here's a problem. How do we solve it? We make cheap labor.
Yep.
Out of moles. So
I like that because I was trying to figure out, because in the trailers it showed the mole men being like with a coal fire and the different stuff, and I was like, is that like a cryptid that I didn't understand or know? And I looked up, I was like, West Virginia mole men, and the only thing I got was the Kimmy Schmidt show on Netflix, which is the mole women, but that's a very interesting theory.
I want to see how it plays out, or what other variations there kind of are. The other, still in the area, but running north, so a little bit past, there's a pharmaceutical company. Now, drugs and medications play a huge role in Fallout games. Like, from a player standpoint, they're how you get aid and boost and support and different kind of things. But I can't think of a single game that really, except for you crafting stuff yourself, there's no real explanation for where all this is manufactured. Where does it come from? And I couldn't think of another pharmaceutical company in any of the games that was present. But here there is. So what a sort of interesting twist if West Virginia is responsible for creating all of the pharmaceuticals that you see in the entire Fallout universe. That rather than people shipping 500 million pills here, a company in West Virginia were the ones that were creating them and shipping them.
That would make
else.
sense historically because of our issues with prescription companies and pharmaceutical companies and our state dependence on drugs and our real problems that we have with addiction here.
Well, there's either Forbes or Fortune had an article a couple years ago on the beginnings of the opioid crisis, and specifically asking the question, why West Virginia? And in Eastern Kentucky, like why this section of Appalachian? Why did it start here? And they make an incredible point about the economic structure, because again, that's kind of what they do.
Right.
But the economic structure of the area, the number of blue-collar jobs where it'd be necessary to go back to work quickly, the privatization of workers' compensation and how that affected treatment, and that in the end, you have this system that perpetuates just get up, take whatever you need to go to work and go through your day, because if you don't, you're going to lose your job, you're going to get fired, you're not going to get paid. And that kind of ties in with a number of other sources and descriptions of working in the mines, working in the coal fields, and how they dealt with pain, drug use in them, et cetera. But it's interesting to see all of that connect in, and you see a pharmaceutical company in the middle of the ash heap.
And that's something that, I mean, it's tangential that if you follow West Virginia, you kind of know. But I mean, these, the things that you're noticing in people outside of West Virginia wouldn't necessarily make these connections based on what they know or assume about the state.
Oh yeah.
So I'm very glad that they were able to have some people from the West Virginia press there.
It's a little off color, but you want to hear my favorite question I was asking at the Greenbrier?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I've been working with W Explorer on exploring and mapping out Fallout 76. So
that's originally how I found your stuff. Was you had posted some articles kind of when it was like first getting off, and that was about the time that I was first trying to like push my podcast just to get it started and rolling. And you were putting some of the same stuff up there too.
Yeah, just looking at locations that were there, and then connecting them to where the real locations in West Virginia, what is the history of those areas, and kind of speculating about what else might show up in the game because of it. But working through that, I started looking at the areas and okay, why is this here? What does it make sense? Everything else. And there's Toxic Valley. And everything else gets moved around a little bit or kind of adjusted. But for the most part, the mire for the most part is the Eastern Panhandle.
Yeah, 'cause I think Arborsary's up there.
Yeah, like the Cranberry Glades, the Cranberry Bog, for the most part, is the Eastern region. The Savage Divide tends to follow the Appalachians running down in that ridge line. The ash heap, yes, is most of Southern Virginia crammed over, but it's entirely, it's the coal fields. But Charleston is the area that is known as Chemical Valley. And Charleston's in the game, and is approximately the same area, kind of a south-central location on the map.
Right.
Even if you have moved Summersville Dam down to right behind the Capitol, still... it's right there.
You've got to make some concessions, I suppose.
But Charleston is the Chemical Valley. This is the industrial zone. Nitro is right there. And instead, Chemical Valley gets moved to the northernmost part of the map. The Off Dam gets pulled across the border from Pennsylvania into West Virginia and becomes part of the map. Basically, the only thing identified so far that's actually in the northern part of the state is Moundsville.
Yeah.
The Moundsville Penitentiary is there. So I'm looking at it and going, all right, why? You got the Moundsville Penitentiary. You move the Off Dam, and because there are only 2 or 3 locations I've found so far where it's from outside of West Virginia and they pulled it into the state. The Off Dam being one. In Toxic Valley, you move that far north, there has to be a reason for it. All right. So the penitentiary, the off dam, Toxic Valley. And then I remember, Fallout 3, one of the DLCs for Fallout 3 was the pit. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh wasn't nuked, but it was devastated by the irradiated waters in the rivers and just industrial waste, and then overran with raiders. Now, that's 11 years ago that game came out in DLC. But still, so at the time, you don't really question, well, where did all that come from? Where'd you get the waste from? Where did you get, well, the Off River flows north and feeds into the tributaries, like into Pittsburgh. So if the Yoff Dam breaks and it floods Toxic Valley, where's all that waste going? And if it hits Moundsville Penitentiary and causes Moundsville to break so that you have a prison escape, where's all that human refuse going to go as well? So all of this waste from West Virginia is feeding into Pittsburgh.
So they're kind of, in a way, explaining the work that they've done on the East Coast part. That's very, just through the environment itself, just through.
It's just a continuity. Like, you had something sort of left open from Fallout 3 that you're now tying in and explaining, okay, how did this happen? Where did these things come from? So I ask that question to artists, to developers, to different people. And across the board, it was not a definitive yes, because everybody contributes together, but all of them felt like, yeah, that made sense. That kind of continuity were the things that they did. And then I asked the follow-up question, because let's take all of that and put it in context. Toxic Valley is also right close to where Voltech University is.
Yeah, I think I remember on the map. Yeah.
So WVU made it into the game, and Pittsburgh gets shortened down to the pit. And you now very literally have this creation on the map where you have all of this waste from West Virginia feeding into the pit. That's a long way to go for an eat shit pit joke.
That's excellent.
And that's...
I was wondering where you were going with. That's perfect. Well, there you go. You got the preview for this week. That's put that one on the books.
That's it. Like, and I got the same reaction from every one of the Bethesda people of, like, they started trying to run the numbers in their head and going, what, did we just? Because I started off with, like, do you watch football? Do you know WVU? Like, you know how everybody has their rivalries and WVU's his pit, and they're like, yeah, where's this going? Where's this? And then I give it context, and they're like, because that's not a complicated conspiracy theory. No. That's not like you've got to put 12 pieces together or that. No.
It's like...
like the continuity part makes sense. But in doing that continuity, because of other choices that you made...
I mean...
There it is.
They made Pitt eat shit.
Yes. Like...
Add Bethesda, Maryland to the WVU fans. Take that, Pitt.
Well, you see all the colors for the streamers and everything else. You saw the green private and the others.
Gold.
Yeah,
That was my when I saw the first trailer in the vault, I was like, are they doing West Virginia? Because I heard the country roads. I was like, everything's blue and gold, even though that has nothing to do with it. I'm like, I bet you it's West Virginia. And then I think I maybe made a comment, like, they're probably doing West Virginia. And they said, somebody coming back, they were like, no, they wouldn't do that. Nobody knows anything about West Virginia.
That would be the point when I went ahead and reached out to 100 Days in Appalachia about doing a subreddit. Because I'm going through the Fallout 76 sub, and there are all these discussions on, no, they're doing West Virginia, it's something else. And I'm like, are you blind?
Yeah.
Or just not from here? Because you could see every post on West Virginia going, but yeah, no, it's West Virginia.
Yeah. And then when they had the full trailer, and it was like me literally going, yes, yeah, that's it. That's in there. I know that. And then they showed the Capitol, I was like, I'm 2 blocks away from that.
Just celebrate and go from there.
So what was your... outside of what you talked about, what do you think was your favorite thing that you learned while you were at the Greenbrier? You had mentioned to me a little bit before about maybe some of the people that took trips, but I just kind of want to get your bow on all of this, what your favorite thing was.
My absolute favorite thing was I got to talk to, like, I have a 14-year-old and two 11-year-olds who watch a whole lot of YouTube. And being able to talk to people that they knew, but seeing, influencers and YouTube and gamers, but seeing their perspective on West Virginia and being able to talk with them about, that's not fiction. This is West Virginia history and lore that they worked into it, and their excitement with it, and their really wanting to know more. After the gameplay, I was sitting down for dinner with several of the guys from West Virginia, and then several YouTubers that had like over 1 million followers kind of between them. And for all of them, I was talking about the ash sheet that I mentioned from earlier. And they're like, wait, that's not just, like, that wasn't just story for the game? I'm like, no. Like, and tried to condense the assassination, like the Battle of Matewan, and then the assassination of Sid Hatfield, and the Battle of Blair Mountain, and explaining that was 1921, not even a century ago, and that for us, this is essentially recent history, and it just blew their minds. Like, this is not anything that the rest of the world has, the rest of the U.S. has any concept of our real things, and they're about to in the biggest way possible.
That was kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I have been told it's like, okay, if Appalachia's story can only be told by Appalachians and people from here. I mean, you can have people come out, and so it's like, okay, it's I have a regular job and I work 4 days a week doing something different, and so it was like, what can I do to kind of help not only talk about something fun like Fallout and something like that, but help people understand West Virginia in our state. And it was I was like, well, I'm used to doing research, and I'm used to talking about history, and I'm used to doing these things. It's what if I can bring that to people who don't normally listen to that stuff. And so a lot of our listeners are from West Virginia, and a lot of our listeners, I mean, there was one month that we had a bunch of people from Amsterdam. It was like we had like 1 week where we had like 100 or 200 listeners from Amsterdam, which is like kind of out there. But that was the kind of the idea that I had was, how do I bring these stories that we have and in a form that I feel most comfortable in, because I'm not a Twitch streamer or something like that.
See, for me, it was that idea of Reclamation Day. Like, that struck a chord with me, and for me, it was, I very strongly wanted to do a charity event. There have been 2 Fallout events, technically, in West Virginia so far, not counting the Greenbrier. So 2 events open to the public. The Camden Park event that had 400 people show up off of a Facebook event post.
That was crazy, and it was like I had no clue about it until I saw a picture and then saw a write-up that was in our same. We got interviewed for, I think it was like the Parkersburg paper, News and Sentinel.
Yeah.
We got interviewed for that, and then one of the guys that organized it got interviewed, and I reached out to him and talked to him for a little bit.
So you weren't there.
No, I was not there.
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
It's 100 degrees.
Oh, my goodness. That was like when it was at the Mothman Festival, and everybody was in full cosplay get-up, and I was like, yep, no, I'm here in my shorts.
Also 100 degrees that day. But Camden Park was no more prepared for an event happening than they were any other day. It's 100 degrees. I'm there with my kids. We went inside the grill in the back to get bottled water and sit in the air conditioning. The air conditioning wasn't really working, and they didn't have any bottled water. Like, and yet the guys that organized it had communicated with Camden Park that here's this event, and they'd worked out, discount tickets and the rest. It didn't matter. 400 people, though, still showed up to hang out in that parking lot just to celebrate the game.
And this was like quick. This was like trailer drop.
2-week turnaround, boom.
That's crazy.
And there were, of those 400, 10% had already had cosplay and stuff put together that they were doing, which was fantastic. The Mothman Festival numbers still aren't out yet, but by all accounts, they saw a 30 to 50% increase in attendance. And the one that stands out for me is, if you've never been to Mothman Festival, there's this wonderful moment when you go where you have to admit you didn't know there were that many goths in West Virginia. Like, there's just a very distinctive costume and style of dress that people wear.
Right.
And the cryptid investigators kind of look like Men in Black. But there was this other group there. And I walked up the information desk to ask where the Bethesda table was. And I didn't get the sentence out of my mouth. They were like, "Are you looking for the Bethesda table?" "Yeah, you look like a Fallout guy." Like, clearly, I didn't fit the mold of everyone else. But they'd recognize that there were enough people there that were just for Fallout and that. But there's the major pull for the Mothman Festival is the museum. And there'd be a line of people 45 minutes to an hour going down the street to get in the museum. Bethesda had 2 picnic tables set up underneath the shelter. And there's a line of people going down the street that is at least as long as the one from the museum, maybe longer.
Yeah, it was like 3 blocks when I looked at it.
Yeah,
It was something
just to go to a merch table.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm glad they showed up. Don't get me wrong, but that's all it was.
Right.
And that crowd still came. I very much wanted to capture that and go into how do we draw attention to what we're doing, to solutions, to like what's happening in the game, solutions to problems in West Virginia.
So you had mentioned to me that is this a part of?
Yeah.
You had mentioned an event to me of some sort.
I'm working on the weekend of November 9th and 10th in Huntington, a launch party and a convention for Fallout 76 and Reclamation Day as a charity event for the larger problems of West Virginia, our addiction recovery, foster care, the lack of autism services, and children in poverty, and sort of the related education, everything goes with that. So 4 groups then that stand out. Cafe Appalachia, which is in South Charleston, and does, yes, we need more beds and more recovery, but once people go through those programs, then how do they find a way back to working into their lives?
I'm familiar
and
with
Cafe Appalachia does a job of filling that and filling that purpose. Children's Home Society has 18 locations around the state working with foster care and foster care agencies. WV Autism, working on building and bridging the gap with resources in the state and finding places that don't have them. And then the West Virginia Healthy Kids and Families Coalition works towards how do we improve poverty and education in the state and make it better. So this is something that fits that idea of Reclamation Day, of all of us coming together to, yes, celebrate the game and have fun playing it.
Right.
But in doing so, do some good with it.
Work on our foundation.
Yeah, and rather than like not just talking about a problem and not just looking elsewhere for help or coming in, but how do we actively work on finding solutions and improving them with resources that we have available here,
right,
and go from there. So right now I'm working on drawing attention for that. I've got an article coming out in Herald Dispatch, should be this week, and then just ticket sales and press releases and media and other stuff to sort of promote that. But seeing that event come in and giving all the people that even when it was just a parking lot, showed an interest that they wanted to be involved in something.
They wanted to do something, and people are looking. I know it's like the number one question I get mainly on Twitter messages and different stuff is, do you know of anybody that's doing something?
Yeah.
For
That's it. And it was like I've been working on this since June, and the thing that keeps kind of surprising me is the answer to that question has been no.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like the lone voice going, I am, come and play. So we're going to have a blast, and we're going to do some good. And I've got a list of partners and groups that have been amazing, kind of supporting and helping along the way. City of Huntington and Mayor Williams' office has been really supportive, and Cucumber and Company, which is a media company from the southern part of the state, is doing a lot of media and planning on streaming it.
So there you go.
Even those that can't participate one way, you can still do it another. But just how do we get out there and show what West Virginia is capable of, and just have some fun.
Well, that sounds great. And that's November
9th and 10th.
9th and 10th.
So the game releases the 14th.
14th, right.
So it'll be the weekend before.
And that's where's that? Have you got a location down yet, or are you still working on that?
No. The 9th will be on Marshall's campus.
Okay.
So Friday is the launch party. And then Saturday is Big Sandy.
Okay. The Big Sandy Arena.
Big Sandy Arena. And so Subasicon and the Power Up convention, most of the conventions in the area is where they kind of use it. So it seems like it'd be a good fit.
Okay.
And go from there.
Well, that sounds excellent. That sounds like a wonderful event. If you're in town, and I kind of made an all call for the Mothman Festival, I'll make another all call for this. That it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of people doing different stuff at the event, and you guys should come out and participate. It'll be a really good time.
Thank you. Website should be up this week. Reclaim WV.
We'll tweet it and send it out. Kind of do a wolf it as they do in the office. Send it on all social media platforms this week.
Okay. Appreciate that.
But John, that's about it for today.
Okay.
But I really want to thank you for coming in, and it works as a great free-form conversation of getting your perspectives of West Virginia experiencing this game. But as for today, that's it. Don't forget to email us your questions at vaultboyswv@gmail.com. Check us out on social media at vaultboyswv, and tell your friends. For now, the vault door is closing. Stay safe.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2, season 4 of Vault Boys Not Fucked It Up.